pre-event is also the first virtual pre-event we have ever had for the WSDS. For today's event, something like 2,000 participants have registered, so much so that we had to create 2 different fora. So many of you are registered on Zoom, and many of you are registered through YouTube. And the 2 combined provide us with the ability to reach out to a much greater audience than we had anticipated. We have a host of esteemed speakers. I am particularly grateful to the Union Minister for Environment and Forest, Mr. Javadekar, for agreeing to be with us here today. He unfortunately got called out due to a meeting this afternoon, but hurriedly put together a video which he shared with us, which we will screen in a little while. We are also delighted that we have Ambassador Hugo Astuto, who is the Ambassador of the European Union to India. We have Ambassador Hans-Jakob Frydenlund, the Norwegian Ambassador to India. Ms. Jan Thompson, who is the Acting British High Commissioner. But most importantly, our keynote speaker, I'm delighted that our dear friend, Professor Nicholas Stern, is here with us today. It is also great that one of our long-standing partners for the World Sustainable Development Summit, the Asian Development Bank, is here as well. And it is wonderful to welcome Mr. Woochong, who is the Director General for Sustainable Development and Climate Change at the ADB. We look forward to engaging with all of them. We will also be launching today a very special youth initiative called The Youth Unites for a Safe and Secure Environment for All. Now, we are looking forward to the youth to design and carry this forward. And we will have a young speaker who will share her thoughts with her, both about the importance of the event, and I hope would also look at what this would look like in the future. We have initiated a special youth feature that operationalizes this relationship through various channels. The aim is to be able to help the youth in mobilizing, in planning, and in implementing a range of actions that could help them move and help them carry out the actions, both in terms of physical actions as well as political actions that carry this agenda ahead. With us receiving the minister's speech as a video speech, I am proposing a slight change in the agenda. And what I am proposing is that we start off with Professor Stern's address, follow it up with our colleague Shambhavi, who will be speaking on behalf of the youth, and then open it up for discussion with all our eminent panelists. So without further ado, can I request Professor Nicholas Stern to deliver the keynote address? Nick, we look forward to listen to you.
Thank you, Ajay, and thank you. It's very good to see friends on the screen here. And my own High Commissioner, Jan, also in the group. It's always a great pleasure to work with you, Ajay, with TERI, and of course the WSDS, which has played a vital role in drawing us all together to talk and reflect seriously on these huge challenges. I want to speak quickly on three things: where we are, what we should be doing, nation by nation, and then say something about internationalism. I will have to be quick on all three. But if we think where we were in, say, December, January, when I was last in India, we had realized as a world, just before all this broke on us, how big the pressure the last 70 years of growth had put on our planet. And we recognized it was unsustainable. We recognized we had to change. We recognized we had to tackle the problems of climate, biodiversity, oceans, and so on. And that actually was deepening as we moved towards the end of last year. But then, of course, COVID broke on us. And I think we have to recognize two fundamental lessons of these last months. The first is that we're at grave risk of a global depression. Output in the UK has not fallen as deeply as this since the collapse of the South Sea bubble about 300 years ago. This is a quite extraordinary change in our economic circumstances. It has battered confidence, it has stretched liquidity, private and public, and it's going to be hard to get back. And we have to act strongly in each nation and strongly across the nations. We cannot rely on a simple bounce back, and the world consequence of an extended depression would be deep, with potentially disastrous consequences for our social and political fabrics, nation by nation, and indeed internationally. So we have to recognize the magnitude there, and particularly for developing countries who, on top of all the difficulties of health and social security in this context, have to face collapse of remittances, falling commodity prices, capital flight, for many drops in tourism. So the first thing I think is the severity of the economic position potentially, as well as, of course, the health strategies that we're experiencing. We can get out of it, but do not assume bounce back. We have to act strongly. The second is that the word back is troublesome. We should be looking forward. We should be doing things differently. We should not be going back to the dangers and fragilities and inequities of the old economy. So the second thing, as well as after realizing the magnitude of the problem, we should recognize no going back. It was dangerous, it was fragile, and had all sorts of social stresses. So we have to be together, having a vision of a different way of developing, reducing poverty, growing, pursuing the SDGs. And we can do that, and our ideas were forming as we looked at the challenges of climate change and biodiversity. And we have to recognize that what we have done to the planet has made pandemics more likely. The zoonotic viruses emerge in most of the pathogens that we face as humans. The majority are zoonotic. They emerge from interactions between wild animals, domestic animals, and human animals. And if we radically change those interactions, we increase the probability of more viruses, and some of those will be deeply damaging. So this pandemic is related, as other pandemics in the future will be, to climate change and biodiversity. So that's where we are, and I hope that we would have the conversation premised on no going back, finding a much better way of doing things, one that we were already beginning to trace out. Let me turn then to the next part of what I want to say, which is what we have to do. As you all know, those of us who've been working in India for a long time, we've always admired the Indian saying, what to do. And of course, we know what to do can be said in a positive way, and it can be said in a way of resignation. I'm saying it in the positive way, what to do. Well, the first thing is to build a recovery around the ideas of sustainability. And you know, you're not all economists on this call, some of you are, but you don't have to be, to recognize the importance of finding ways back that are fast, labor intensive, and have strong economic multipliers. Much of the sustainability agenda has exactly that: fast, labor intensive, strong economic multipliers. Think of retrofitting buildings, think of rooftop solar, think of extending broadband, think of managing our cities so that they're more friendly to cyclists and pedestrians. All those are ways around energy, transport, cities, which we can pursue very quickly in this phase where unemployment is going to be with us. In other words, we're bringing forward in time, again, to use Indian English, preponing those kinds of things that we needed to do. And we know we needed to do that. We know we needed to do them. We have unemployment. It makes eminent economic and environmental sense to bring them forward in time. That was physical capital. Same with natural capital. Think about trees. Think about restoring degraded land, which is, of course, both those things, a big part of the Indian agenda. Think about working on water. Again, they can be fast, labor intensive, and with strong multipliers. So the sustainability agenda is also the strong recovery agenda. It's related to, but not the same as the argument we've made for some time, which is that there are tremendous opportunities, investment, innovation, jobs in the transformation. On top of that, we see that the sustainable route to recovery is the fast route to recovery. Looking forward, as that recovery progresses, and it's going to take a year or two or maybe three, but we hope to get back to the story of transformational growth, and the sustainable recovery will have laid the foundations for the transformational growth. There, we will have a world with investment opportunities which are enormous, with plenty of savings, and the challenge will be to translate investment opportunities into real programs and to get the right savings in the right place at the right time. That's the challenge for the world as a whole. It means strong policies to pull through the investment opportunities into actual programs. It will need stable government policies, credible paths outlined into which people can invest, and we will need to think of investment in all four sorts of capital: physical, human, natural, and social. And particularly where they're all of vital importance, the human capital will be of special importance at a time of unemployment where we risk scarring in the labour market, we risk a lost generation for employment. So we have to think of investment in human capital strongly, as well as the investments in natural, physical, and social capital. The right kind of finance, the right place at the right time. I'm pushing very strongly in my own country, let's see if we succeed, for a national investment bank, because at a time of stretched liquidity, at a time of difficult confidence, a national investment bank can be very powerful. I strongly recommend that India does the same. And of course, we have the multilateral banks as well, which must and can play their role. That it will be very much in combination with the private sector, and the confidence that a national investment bank or a multilateral development bank brings can lower the cost of capital for the private sector. Finally, let me just say a few words on the international front. The stress in the developing world as a result of what we've seen means that for many countries, the debts are truly unsustainable. If debts are unsustainable, they can't be sustained. We have to work directly on a program of debt standstills and debt reduction. We began in the G20 and at the annual meetings virtual of the Bank and Fund a month or so ago, but we have to go much further than that. So the first part of the international story would be to respond quickly to this crisis and manage the debt much better. Not just to the poorest countries, of course, it's understandable that priorities are there, but those debt problems are big across the world economies. And if the emerging market economies or other economies get into real difficulty and affects us all. So the first international task is to manage the debt. But we can also, as we move out of the recovery stage, having managed the debt, having got the right kind of recovery in place, we have to turn our minds to building those structures, those international structures, which can provide the flows of finance that we need. So I would prioritize, as we move out of the recovery period, two things. One is bringing down the costs of technology, and the other is bringing down the costs of capital. And of course, bringing down the cost of capital is in large measure about managing risk. There's so many investments we have to make. We know, for example, in India, that air conditioning demand will increase. And I just choose that as one example, but that is the kind of story that we really have to look at to see how we can bring those costs right down and to make them much cleaner. That is an example where the world could get together. There's so much more where we know now that we can really start to decarbonize steel and cement, things that we thought were more difficult than before, and indeed India playing a strong role on Dalmia, for example, on the cement story. We could go on about the technologies, but that is a very important part of international collaboration, and the ideas will go both ways. The second is the international cost of capital, the flows, the 100 billion, of course, a part of that. We have seen that in delivering on the 100 billion, or at least in approaching the 100 billion, because it's not yet delivered, which was central to COP, it has been central to all the COPs since Copenhagen and Cancun in 2009 and 2010, was central to Paris in 2015, that 100 billion, the most powerful element, has been in terms of the flows through the international financial institutions. And that means that we have to increase the ability of those international financial institutions to play their role in the world. And that means the G20 countries in particular are pushing for that expansion. India, of course, a big part of that story, particularly as its presidency of the G20 is coming up in about a year and a half. So finally then, India will be the leader in all this. It is India that is going to play a vitally important role in shaping the 21st century. I think India's ideas coming through this period of crisis and the rescue period, and India's ideas in the recovery period are going to be of enormous importance. And their ideas about how we work together, their ideas about finance, their ideas about technology. Across the board, I think India can and will be a leader on that. We're all going to have to collaborate much better with China. And that nothing's ever simple, but you cannot fail to look at the issue of working with China in a very direct and constructive and positive way. I think Europe can play a strong role in that. Note that, please, that notwithstanding my accent and my passport, I see UK as part of Europe for this purpose. We should never have left the EU, that's another story. We fought it all the way. But in terms of Europe, it seems to me it's very important that we work together with the European Union to collaborate with India, to collaborate with China, to build an international recovery story and to build together on that transformational growth. And it is this kind of discussion that I think will enable us to do that. It's right that it's the World Sustainable Development Summit, and I think the kinds of collaborations that we will see coming will be of vital importance, and we can help them along the road. And I should add, to save Jan, she doesn't have to mention Brexit at all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's delightful to always hear you, the freshness that you bring, and the insight that you provide into the kinds of discussions that we are having. As we move ahead, I think the kinds of ideas that you have provided, which is at the same time looking at the three pillars that you talked about, are important. I particularly want to stress the point that you made about having everybody on the table, whether it is China, whether it is India, whether it is, I would say, the elephant in the room, the US. Because a sustainable recovery, and especially a green sustainable recovery, would not be possible without having everybody in the room. May I now request Shambhavi to share her thoughts as we look at the initiation of the youth initiative. And may I request colleagues, whether you are on Zoom or on YouTube, to send us your questions. People on Zoom can send it through the question and answer icon that you have on your screen. And people on YouTube can send it through the comments box. We look forward to those. So Shambhavi, all yours.
Good evening, esteemed guests and my dear friends. On the eve of World Environment Day, I'm honored to present my views and aspirations for a safe and secure future on behalf of youth of India. The environment and health emergency that we witness today is a wake-up call. As youth of this planet, we realize that our stakes are high. It is only through action, however little or big, that we can change the world for better. We have to be on constant lookout for alternatives that are saving on our natural resources. We need to be vocal for local, for a global impact. Some immediate actions include nurturing community gardens or encouraging use of public transports, opting for renewables, or supporting rainwater harvesting. I'm a strong advocate for the use of Indian handicrafts, for which I have also been part of an online startup, lithics.in. I have worked to bring about awareness on various government schemes such as Jaivik Heart and the Jaivik Bharat PGS movement. Through my work at Cluster Innovation Center, Delhi University, I have also worked upon the prevalence of environment in lifestyle diseases. Another area that I do believe we need to concentrate upon is adoption of healthy lifestyle through exercise. And I would like to draw your attention to us, the youth and future of this nation. You shall involve us and give us a chance to promote sustainable solutions through our campuses, which are a budding ground for ideas and innovation. Let us, the youth, help in nation building process. We look forward to joining hands with you in this sustainable future. On a parting note, I an active response. The time to act is now. Without taking more of your time, I would like to thank TERI for providing me with such an opportunity to put forth my views on this esteemed platform. Thank you.
Shambhavi, many, many thanks. I did lose you for a few seconds. I hope it was only us and not others. We heard you with great interest. It is important that we are able to go ahead and link with you and your cohort. Because one of the problems that I see, and I see it in myself, is the inability to look beyond the mindset which I grew up in. And I think every interaction helps us broaden, helps us understand what you are saying, and I hope help you understand where we are coming from. I think we all have a stake in a planet that works not only today, but works tomorrow, the day after, and the day after that. And I'm hoping that the initiative that you are launching today, and which we will support fully, as I said earlier, whether it is in planning or in implementation or in follow-up, we hope that it will lead to making a difference over a period of time. Can I now request the minister's recorded message to be played now?
Friends, I had committed to participate in your precursor to Indian Sustainable Development Conference of 2021 today in the afternoon. But as I have another political exigency, I will not be able to participate that time. Therefore, I am with you through this video link. This year, World Environment Day, we are observing, and the theme is biodiversity. As we all know, India, though there are so many constraints of only 2.5% land, constraint of huge population of 16% human population of the world and 16% cattle population of the world. But still we have maintained biodiversity of 8%. World biodiversity is in India, with only 4% of rainwater resources. So India's culture ethos is to be one with nature. We are practically the only country which worships trees, which worships animals, birds, everybody. So we love nature, and our ethos is to live with nature. India in its CBD has decided to accept Nagoya Protocol and ABS, and we are implementing through Biological Diversity Act 2002, and we are on progress. More importantly, sustainable lifestyle is India's strong point. Probably we are among very few countries who are walking the talk on the issue of NDCs. We have put good targets on our own through our NDCs about reducing energy intensity, emission intensity, having renewable energy component in our installed capacity to the extent of 40%, to have 2.5 to 3 billion metric tons of carbon sequestration. We also have decided on sustainable lifestyle, climate-friendly growth path, climate change adaptation, climate finance, and technology and capacity building. So on all these accounts, TERI is our partner. We value this relationship, and I wish all the best for the main event, in which, if you call me, I'll definitely be there. Thank you and all the best.
Well, thank you very much, Minister Javadekar. I thank the Minister particularly for the recording that he made that we played just now. I know that he was hard pressed to do it, but I think I am grateful that he did. As we go ahead, we have
four excellent panelists: Ambassador Astuto, Ambassador Frydenlund, High Commissioner Thompson, and Mr. Woochong. We also have Professor Nicholas Stern with us. We heard him a moment ago, and if he has the time, I would very much like him to be here. I already see that a lot of people are addressing comments to him. So without further ado, let me move to the panel and request brief insights by our panelists. Let me start with Ambassador Astuto. Ambassador, all yours.
Thank you very much. And thank you again to TERI for organizing this event and for inviting me today on the eve of World Environment Day. As Professor Stern said earlier, I mean, this year we are celebrating World Environment Day at a defining moment in the wake of the epidemic. I think we all realize now more than ever that the world is one, and that global challenges require an internationally cohesive and coordinated response. The current situation urges us to reflect also on the model followed so far and on our common future. We are all facing major global challenges with severe impacts on our health, on our lives, on economies and the environment. And let me say that today's launch of the initiative Youth Unite for a Safe and Secure Environment for All by TERI is particularly fitting, since we need to involve the youth in the choices we are making, which are of great import for next generations. So let me echo what the youth leader, Mrs. Shambawi, said earlier. It's time to act now. We need the youth to question our old approaches and to push for new solutions. We have to build a greener, digital, just, and resilient future. And in order to do so, we have to reshape our economies to restore biodiversity and to cut pollution. It's in these perspectives that last week, the European Commission, as you may know, has proposed a recovery package for Europe. The fallout of the crisis is such that we will all need major investments on an unprecedented scale. But these investments need not just be directed at rebuilding our economies to preserve the achievements of the past 70 years. We actually need to reshape our economies to build better economies towards a world which is climate neutral, which is sustainable. All the attention now is inevitably on the COVID-19 crisis, on how to save lives and how to recover from the present, from the likely recession facing us. Rightly so, but we should be under no illusion. The climate crisis has not gone away. The biodiversity crisis has not gone away, and these challenges will have to be addressed. They have to be addressed now. The EU recovery package, which is called Next Generation EU, is underpinned by a new paradigm. We want to move away from the old economy, and we want to proceed towards a greener and sustainable future. The Green Deal is the EU's new growth strategy. We want to overcome the challenges of climate change, of environmental degradation, and we want to transform the European Union into a more modern, resource-efficient, and competitive economy. So in this respect, we want the EU to be climate neutral by 2050, with no net emissions of greenhouse gases. And we want economic growth to be decoupled from resource use. And all this while no one is left behind. This will happen by turning climate and environmental challenges into opportunities. And we want to make this transition just, fair, inclusive to all. The European Green Deal provides a roadmap with actions to boost the efficient use of resources by moving to a clean, circular economy. The strategy includes a massive renovation of infrastructure and a more circular economy, the rolling out of renewable energy projects, wind, solar, but also hydrogen. It includes cleaner transport and logistics, and the strengthening of a just transition fund to help business create new economic opportunities so that no one is left behind. But in order for this strategy to work, to be successful, the European Union cannot act alone. We need to act consistently with our partners. And I'm happy to say that the EU and India are already cooperating on a number of fronts in fighting climate change, in the greening of the economy, and for a sustainable modernization of our societies. It's already since quite a few years that the recent EU-India summits have established a number of EU-India cooperative ventures. Let me mention a few which I believe are particularly significant. The EU-India Clean Energy and Climate Partnership, for instance, which is about building up energy efficiency. The India-EU Water Partnership, where we cooperate on the Clean Ganga initiative, and we have also produced India's first ever comprehensive river basin management plan for the Tapi Basin. The India-EU Partnership for Smart and Sustainable Urbanization, where we contribute to a number of flagship programs such as Swachh Bharat, the 100 Smart Cities Mission, and Amrut. And finally, in the area of resource efficiency, we have set up the EU Resource Efficiency Initiative with concrete outputs in terms of contributing to India's resource efficiency strategy. So to conclude, as Professor Stern said earlier, I think that the COVID-19 crisis has sounded a very clear alarm. We must act now for the sake of future generations. And let me also mention here the fact that the postponement of COP26 until 2021 should not prompt a slack in climate policy work, the opposite rather. On the contrary, the extra time available should be put to good use in order to produce ambitious outcomes. The cost of action is much smaller than the cost of inaction. And I believe that India and the EU together can lead the international community in this global endeavor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador Astuto. I think the long-term strategic partnership between the European Union and India has the potential, has delivered and has the potential to be a game changer as far as the world is concerned, but more importantly, as far as climate and sustainable development is concerned. And clearly, the kinds of pathways that we establish would very much determine the future. And as Professor Stern mentioned, for my mental mindsets, as far as this work is concerned, I think this is an area in which the UK and Europe are aligned. And I think that makes the work at COP26 that much more convenient, because then the number of competing stakeholders become that much more manageable. Without further ado, let me move to Ambassador Frydenlund. And Ambassador, can we request you to share your thoughts with us? Ambassador, you're muted. I think you'd have to unmute your microphone.
Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. I think I will try to be brief because we have problems with technology here. So first, a huge thank to TERI for arranging this kickoff for next year's World Sustainable Development Summit. Norway has been a partner of the summit for over a decade. We prefer to be a partner in the real world, but we will stand by in the virtual world as well. And I think the theme is well chosen. as we are still in the turmoil of the COVID pandemic, which will force us to reassess how to move forward. And the stroke of genius of the Brundtland Commission's report back in 1987 was to overcome the antagonism between development and environment. But the challenge is that in times of crisis, we often choose to see development and environment as opposed to each other. The world is now coming out of a giant lockdown, which has hurt economies severely all over the world. The reopening of the world is an important test for our ability and our commitment to further sustainability. The opening needs to be green, clean, circular, and inclusive. Since the Rio conference in 1992, there's been a race between our scientific, technological, and institutional capacity to further sustainability and the challenges to the environment caused by economic growth. This is a race, I will say, on balance, we have been winning, and we shall not let this temporary setback endanger those gains. Sustainability requires a giant toolbox of different measures. And this is to Minister Javadekar, because I'm happy that we managed to have a visit of our Minister of Environment from Norway, Svein Rotevatn, just before the lockdown. Because the visit highlighted a wide range of areas of cooperation between Norway and India in areas of sustainability, as HFC phase down, persistent organic pollutants, biodiversity, waste management, marine litter, ocean management, and blue economy, just to name a few. Norway is a small nation, but a big ocean state. And the state of ocean is therefore a particular concern to us, and an area where international cooperation is of essence. And here we really value our cooperation with India. And that's also why we put much emphasis on the work of the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy, led by our Prime Minister, Erna Solberg. And I just will use this occasion to call your attention to the latest report commissioned by the panel on how to handle marine pollution. Norway is and will continue to be a consistent partner in an endeavor to secure our common future. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. You know, I think the point that you made about the toolbox is extremely important. I noticed that we have a habit of, and by we I mean people of my age, have a habit of making toolboxes that are good for us, not good for tomorrow. And I'm hoping that the linkages that we develop through the youth partnerships help us in defining the kinds of tools that we need, not only for today, but we need for tomorrow and the day after. And I think one of the things that we will take away is what are the kinds of tools. You know, so there are some that Shambhavi mentioned, but I think it needs a degree of attention on what are these kinds of interventions. Let me now turn to Ms. Jan Thompson, who is the acting British High Commissioner. High Commissioner Thompson, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It is great to be here with you in this virtual fashion and to see colleagues from TERI, colleagues from around the diplomatic community here in Delhi, and of course to see my dear friend Nick as well from the UK. So really nice to be.
What happened to the voice? क्या हुआ यार, voice गायब हो गई है?
Ms. Jane, you are on mute. Can you just unmute? Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're okay.
So sorry. I was just saying it was great to be here virtually with you and to see colleagues from TERI, colleagues from the diplomatic community here in Delhi, and my dear friend Nick back in the UK. So really nice to be here. But I think others have said very much of this, that, you know, obviously with COVID, we have seen large parts of the global economy shut down, huge severe consequences, but it has also really provided us with a really stark reminder of what happens when our relationship with nature breaks down. And so as we recover, we're going to have to make a decision about that relationship, and about the kind of recovery and the kind of future we want. And we need to really lay the foundation for sustainable and inclusive growth that creates jobs in the industries of the future, as well as addressing the linked challenges of public health, climate change, and biodiversity. We do have some route maps. We've got the Paris Agreement and the SDGs, which are a really strong framework. As my friend Hugo was talking about, next year we have COP26, the UN Climate Change Conference. We think that can be a moment when the world really unites for clean and resilient recovery that delivers for people and for our planet as well. And just recently, the COP Bureau agreed that COP26 would take place now between the 1st and the 12th of November next year. And that revised date will allow the UK, who are co-hosting, with our Italian partners to really harness our twin G7 and G20 presidencies in driving forward climate actions. And as hosts of COP26, we'll really continue to work with all parties to try and maintain momentum and ensure no one is left behind, as was said, and build resilience, lower emissions, and really encourage all countries to come forward with ambitious actions. We're committed to working with the government of India as a key partner on the path to a successful and ambitious COP, including on key shared priorities like clean energy transition, adaptation and resilience, and clean transport. And the government of India has given commendable support to renewables throughout this COVID crisis, sending, I think, a really strong signal that green development needs to be at the heart of any resilient strategy for recovery. And it's, of course, great that we can continue to work with partners like TERI as you plan your own milestone events like the World Sustainable Development Summit. But the core focus, I think, of COP26, our big focus, remains largely unchanged. Still, COVID is a really important new factor in it. It heightens the risks and the stakes, but it also heightens the potential to create employment in the industries of the future through a clean and resilient recovery. Technology is on our side as we rebuild our economies. The opportunities offered by technology will really help to accelerate the transition to a clean future. Innovations in energy storage technologies, smart electricity, grids, zero emission vehicles, etc., all some of the technologies that can help us to pioneer a path to greener growth. And the economic prize is really clear. If we can pull this off, we know that renewable energy sources like solar and wind are already cheaper than coal in most countries, even now, including India. We know that boosting investment in renewables will really increase jobs in the sector hugely. So this is really an opportunity that we're grasping in the UK now because we think it's the right thing to do for the planet, but also because we think it's the smart thing to do for our economy. And in the UK, we're currently witnessing a period of more than 50 uninterrupted days of coal-free power. It's the longest period since the Industrial Revolution. And we've also last month announced plans for the world's largest offshore wind farm, which will create jobs and provide renewable energy for 4.5 million homes in the UK. We know we don't have time to waste, so we've got to move faster and together with everyone else. We're working with the government of India as a member of the International Solar Alliance and co-chair of the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. Really pleased to have launched that just before lockdown started. And of course, with partners like TERI through the Corporate Green Leadership Alliance, which will bring businesses together to set new green commitments and to meet them. And lastly, I'll wind up, but ahead of COP26, we have defined 5 key areas for action where we think that if we work with global partners, we can make progress faster on climate action and a clean and resilient recovery. Number 1, clean energy, to move away from the polluting options of the past and move towards low-cost, zero-emission technologies of the future. Number 2, clean transport, to bring forward the date when zero emission vehicles will be more affordable and more numerous than petrol and diesel. And I know India is working really hard on that too. Number 3, nature-based solutions. With both COP26 and the Convention on Biological Diversity in China, the COP of that in China in 2021, I think that will make next year a really critical year for nature. So we'll work to safeguard ecosystems and protect natural habitats and keep carbon out of the atmosphere. Number 4, adaptation and resilience to help communities adapt to the worst effects of climate change. And number 5, finance to unleash the capital that will pay for the shift to a zero carbon economy. So as the incoming COP presidency, we will indeed continue to press for more ambition around the world. And we know that by joining forces, we can support one another on the path to a clean and resilient recovery. That's it from me. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you very much, High Commissioner Thompson. We note the importance of those 5 themes that would resonate through COP26. I think nature-based solutions has occupied a place of its own. We all understand that the pandemic of today is because of the loss of biodiversity, the lack of biodiversity conservation yesterday. That is what leads humans and animals in closer contact, and therefore zoonotic diseases to increase. And if anything, climate change will exacerbate this trend. I think it is important that we think of solutions through which communities can find an interest in maintaining biodiversity. I think it is never better than now to bring this on the global agenda. We have Director General Woochong with us from the Asian Development Bank, and I look forward to your comments, Mr.
Thank you very much. I assume you can hear me, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much. Ambassador Astuto, Ambassador Frydenlund, Commissioner Thompson, and of course, Professor Stern. It's an honor to be here with you, and also everyone who's connected through this innovative online process. And of course, I really need to thank Dr. Ajay Mathur of TERI for giving the ADB the space and the chance to participate in this webinar on the eve of the World Environment Day. And also, I was very much looking forward to listening to the insights of the distinguished speaker, but also the youth representative. As the father of 2 people who are in the youth category, I'm very, very interested in to hear what the young people have to say, because it's really about the future, and it's their world. So today the world is facing 3 global challenges all at once. As you know, the climate change, the widespread diversity decline, and the COVID-19 pandemic, so which we are all affecting the lives of everyone, especially women and youth and local communities. So with this COVID-19 pandemic, the Asian Development Bank is really stretching itself to be a bank as well as a development partner, because many of the things that we are doing are quite a stretch for a bank like the Asian Development Bank. So since the pandemic hit a few months ago, we've been supporting our developing member countries to flatten the curve through providing grant assistance and immediately. And the next step, we've been providing significant resources in financing. And in fact, we provided $20 billion support package, focusing on budget support through the counter-cyclical assistance to the developing countries, to enable the governments to be able to provide the social protection and bouncing back strategies to minimize the impact. And of course, working with the development partners around the region and the world to help improve the health systems. And we are keeping in mind while we are working on this emergency assistance, the environmental and biodiversity, climate change considerations have to be not delayed. So we need to have this financing that's being channeled to have a very positive impact on prevention of the future pandemics as well. So as the next strategy, the building up better for the future, looking forward, focusing on the SDGs is our main focus at the moment. And all of our sectors like transport and energy and education and health and so on and so forth, we are looking at, what would the new normal look like? And that's going to be a very interesting scenarios. So our experts are looking to see how the transport sector will look like. As Commissioner Thompson mentioned, in addition to energy, transport sector is one area that we've been focusing on providing financing so that we can reduce CO2. But what about social distancing? How would it impact our effort to promote railways or mass transit? So there are a lot of very interesting questions that we have to find answers to. So we must keep our eyes on the long-term issues, which will not go away. And in fact, it is an opportunity for us to do much better in the future. So we urgently have to take action to protect environment, mitigate climate change, as well as build resilience on our economies and societies by ensuring that we are reaching the ones that are hit the hardest. But fortunately, our recently approved strategy, long-term strategy, which is called Strategy 2030, it committed us to scaling up the support for our developing countries to achieve safe and secure environment for everyone. Our long-term strategy commits our ADB to even more ambitious targets for climate change. First, ADB will ensure by year 2030, at least 75% of the number of ADB's committed operations shall be supporting climate change mitigation and or adaptation. And in terms of pure dollar numbers, we are committed to deliver at least $80 billion, $80 billion of climate finance from its own resources from now until 2030. So ADB's respond to the needs of our developing member countries and has established 7 corporate priorities. And one of them is called tackling climate change, building climate and disaster resilience, and enhancing environmental sustainability. So again, these 3 are interconnected and they're very, very important agendas, which will be the central to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. The ADB's action plan for healthy oceans and sustainable blue economies, which was launched about a year ago in our annual meeting in Fiji, committed ourselves to expanding investments and technical assistance in the ocean health and the blue economy up to $5 billion from now until 2024. And ADB is also supporting investments in sustainable infrastructure, biodiversity protection and restoration, air and water quality improvement, green business and jobs, and integrated solid waste management and circular economy. So as you can see, ADB is very much aligned with the work that other colleagues are doing, and there's a tremendous synergy. So ADB is committed to ensure that no one is behind also. This is one of the key elements of our strategy 2030. And we have committed to accelerating progress in gender equality. With respect to that, we are setting, again, 75% of ADB's all projects and programs will promote gender equality by 2030. And also not to forget the youth communities to strengthen the resilience and create the safe future for everyone. And finally, playing the role of the bankers, we do need to make a bigger financing footprint. ADB's $20 billion plus, it is a lot of money for me personally, but in the overall scheme of things, it could be seen as a drop in a bucket. So we have to make a bigger footprint. And the only way to do that is to mobilize private sector. So we have to go from billions to trillions into our climate finance. Under the strategy 2030 again, this vision is very much aligned, and therefore increasing our non-sovereign financing is being targeted to increase from 10% at the moment to 30% in the next 5 years, which means that all development partners, ourselves, the World Bank, AIIB, and others, will need to all work together to create an enabling environment for private investments to come in And we need to do that through building and establishing regulatory framework, which will help create a friendly environment for private sector, basically reducing the risk, and also to make more bankable projects through project development. So with that, let me stop for the time being, and thank you very much for your paying attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thanks very much. I do think that the importance of funding in this regard, and specifically, and that was a question that I wanted to put to all of you, but Mr. you seem to have provided a rationale that the funding that is provided could be a means of greening the recovery. And I hope we go into it a little more detail as we go into the questions. We have a huge number of questions. And I don't know how much we can do in the half hour or so that remains to us. But Professor Stern, let me start with a question that is addressed to you from Ambassador Manjeev Puri. He says that he agrees with you that without the biggest contributors of the GHG emissions, US and China, the world will not make real progress on climate change. But then he says, it seems that embedded in your remarks is that India would need to do much of the heavy lifting. And then he asks, I do hope that we can expect an exceptionally high level of international cooperation to make this possible. He also asks, would the COVID event and our emphasis on the recovery from COVID mean that we may have to realign, reconfigure, change our SDG timetable? Professor Stern.
Thank you very much. India's emissions are low per capita. India's emissions are probably a third or a quarter of China's, depending how you measure them. So from the point of view of the overall number of emissions in the world, or the overall level of emissions in the world, India is big, but not like the very big emitters which come from Europe taken together, India and Europe taken together, China and United States. But looking forward, we all hope and we're working to support strong growth in India. So how India changes and how India transforms itself in the next 10 years is of vital importance to aggregate emissions for the world as a whole. So India has importance in that clear quantitative sense, even though, of course, per capita it's way, way below those other big countries. Secondly, India is full of discovery. India is full of innovation. And I mentioned Dalmia cement, for example, as one example. But there are many, many more. I think India in its renewables is showing to South Asia what is possible. So that, for example, as we find many of the Belt and Road initiatives in South Asia, outside India, are focused on coal. And India is showing that this doesn't make any sense, that this is a part of the world where solar and wind can be enormously valuable sources of energy. India is somewhat lower in the degree of urbanization than many other countries. So the kinds of city and the kind of city developments that India creates will be of great importance. So I think India's example in all these areas, and of course there are many more, could be of great importance to the world. And of course, the world should be contributing, whether it's bilateral aid, whether it's working through the various multilateral development banks. The world should be a partner and collaborate with India in that sense. So I think the language of heavy lifting is probably not the right language. It's discovering new ways of doing things and participating and collaborating in new ways of doing things. And we will find that this is the growth story of the 21st century. Jan Thompson emphasized that for the UK. We're genuinely finding that it is the growth story for the UK. India will be showing in its own way, with its own technologies, its own society. India will also be showing that this is the growth story of the 21st century. So that's a language I would rather like to use rather than the language of heavy lifting. On the Sustainable Development Goals, I do think that those are the key dimensions of development. That, I think, is the most important thing about the Sustainable Development Goals, rather than a particular number on a particular date. It is about, if you look at the first 10 of the Sustainable Development Goals, they are about hunger, poverty, health, education, gender. They're about the distributions of those things as well. And if you look at the next 5 of the Sustainable Development Goals, they're about our environment and our oceans and our climate and so on. And if you look at the last 2, they're how we behave in relation to each other, in terms of peace and justice and collaboration. They are, I think, in their structure and their content, the guiding principles we should use when we're talking about building better for the future. They capture what we really worry about. And of course, it's enormously important that they are agreed. I think that if we focus on the sustainable recovery in the way that we have discussed, if we learn the lessons of the lockdown, then I think in some ways we can accelerate towards the Sustainable Development Goals. In other ways, the dislocations and the disruptions will make it more difficult. But I think if we put the 2 together, those things that slow us down a bit, those lessons that speed us up a bit, then I think we should stick to the SDGs as they are for 2030. And remember how big some of those lessons have been. We have found out that we can indeed change very quickly. We found out that we can use what we have in our larders and our pantries. We can actually make do with what we've got in many ways. If you like, we've learned how to become more resource efficient. So if you put rapid change and resource efficiency together, and that we don't have to travel so much, we've learned quite a lot that's useful for the SDGs. And of course, in a very deep sense, I hope we've learned about our common humanity and our shared vulnerability. And those 2 are very important lessons for getting behind and working towards the SDGs.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Stern. I think this is a subject on which we can continue to
talk for a very, very long time. But I do think we need to address other questions as well. We have a question from Urmi Goswami of the Economic Times, and she asks, and Ambassador Astuto, I'll point this towards you and possibly towards Mr. as well. She asks, beyond the EU, there is little appetite for making green and sustainable the core of the recovery. A quick overview of the Indian recovery package makes it clear that the focus is to create the conditions for growth, but sustainability or environmental well-being does not appear to be a priority. Clearly, this needs to change. So how do you propose to make environmental well-being and sustainability a critical component, keeping in mind the constraints of a developing country such as India? Ambassador Astuto, would you like to start off?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, actually, well, I think that in the overall political narrative in India, the issue of sustainability has become central. It's a priority. Obviously, there are also specific constraints and priorities which are proper to India, focusing on the development side. But I think the awareness is growing that development also needs to be sustainable, and that the cost of unsustainable development may be hidden, but sooner or later you need to face it. So I think it's fair to say that this awareness of the need to proceed towards a greener economy and towards a more sustainable model of development, this awareness is growing worldwide. When it comes to the EU, we have a constant, regular conversation with India on these issues, on the issue of sustainable development, and more than that, I dare to say, we have a number of cooperative ventures where we work together for common goals. I mentioned a few of these in the field of energy, in the field of sustainable urbanization, in the field of water management, and I think through these very concrete cooperative ventures, we also develop a culture of working together. So we may have differing views, for instance, when it comes to when we go to the negotiating table at COP26, but I think it's fair to say that we start from the same proposition, that the international community needs to come together and to work towards a more sustainable future.
Mr. would you like to add how the ADB's financial recovery packages could aid or maybe not aid a movement towards green?
Yes, there is a monsoon rain right now here, so it's hard to hear exactly what you're saying, but I can guess. So what can ADB do in terms of helping the recovery? Making use of the recovery packages to make sure that the economies are built in a green way. We have a incredible opportunity right now because through the years, when you talk about sustainable development, we are basically trying to change the behavior of people. And the most difficult part, especially as we get older, is we don't want to change. So it's hard to cause people to change. But with this COVID-19, it's like a shock treatment, and I'm seeing that everyone is trying to do something different, and they realize we have to do something different. Even in our bank, we are kind of conservative, so we don't like to work from home, and we have to all show up in the office. But even that, we have no choice, but we are doing it. So making use of new technology to make things much more efficient, we have an opportunity to push this agenda. More, promoting non-motorized transport. I don't know if you've been in Manila. There's this main thoroughway called EDSA, and it's usually jam-packed. And there's no way in the past anyone would dream of putting bicycle lane on their road. But because of this COVID-19, that's actually happening now. Pilot testing. So if people are willing to go that far and try new things in a better way to build much better in the future, then I think now is a chance to inject that ideas in through this recovery package, where we are investing in on the ground to support people in terms of developing the economy overall. So it's about human behavior change that we need to push. And before, when the youth group, for example, tells us, why don't you try this? We didn't want to try because we were too lazy or we were afraid of changing. But now I think it's a chance to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Boom. We have a very interesting question from Dr. Navin Shetty, who asks that in the rush to achieve financial recovery, there is great risk that governments around the world will forget about the environment. How would you convince the politicians to look for sustainable and sustained recovery and not for quick fixes? Ambassador Frydenlund, the Norwegian government for years has juggled between oil sales and revenues on one hand and a green economy on the other hand. How is it that you as a country have taught politicians to do this, let's say, tightrope walking? You need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I did. Like, Ajay, you're actually pointing to one of the major political discussions in Norway, because it is a question how you're able to reach sustainability. At the same time, you're dependent on economic activity that may be detrimental to the environment. And that's also why it, from Norwegian side, has been extremely important to work on the different elements of greening all parts of production. The world is still dependent on petrol. So it's important that actually it's produced in a sustainable manner as possible, while we're also trying to find ways of moving away from petrol. So there is and then investing heavily into renewables is branching heavily into renewables, particularly into wind power, establishing a number of huge wind power stations onshore and offshore. So there is this paradox we are living with, and that we need to move ahead on the green and minimizing the negative consequences of activities that may be detrimental at the same time.
Thank you very much.
And just a second, and where we find the balance there, that's the defining in the political parties in Norway.
Teeter talks, yes. High Commissioner Thompson, there's a question about what is it that we do between now and the COP, which will now be in November next year, to find convergence on various issues relating to the areas of work, finance, technology, etc. High Commissioner? Well, let me then move to a more general question that is, and this has been asked by several people. It is of the fact about what is it that I as an individual can do. My feeling is that it is our younger colleagues who are asking us. Many of them, Professor Stern, also referred to your speech at the WSDS last year, when you also spoke about this issue. And the questions are essentially, what do I do to prevent the pandemic from happening? What do I do to help reduce climate change? What do I do to enhance resource usage and producing zero wastes? And I think the best one is, as a regular person, should I be concerned with the international state of affairs because my circle of influence lies locally? If yes, are you implying that there is a way for people to act as global citizens instead of only thinking about their cities, states, or countries? Amazingly interesting question, and I'm glad I don't have to answer it. I'm going to ask each of you to weigh in on this. Let me start with you, Nick.
Thank you very much. And as a university teacher, it's a great pleasure to spend your life with students, is that you get older, but they stay the same age and they keep pressing you, and they should. So what can you do? Well, you can, there are different levels. First is how you live your own life, what you eat, what you throw away, how you travel, how you use your energy. The second is what you buy. It's related, of course, but what you buy. You can go to firms where you have reason to believe that they will be more responsible than others. And that puts pressure on them to perform as firms. You can choose where you go to work. Unilever, which has spent a long time building up its contributions to sustainability, including through its supply chain, they now get about 2 million job applications a year because people want to work in good places. If you get the best people as a firm, you will do better. If you show your commitment as a firm, you will get patient capital and so on. So where you choose to buy, where you choose to work is very important. Some of you will have savings. Some of you will be saving over your lifetime for your pensions. But think about where you put your money. It really does matter. And you can invest or ask your pension funds to invest in the activities of the future, and they're going to do better for you if they're more responsible than the activities of the last century. That's not to send your money to a good place. You can then, widening this story, you can press your politicians. Let them know what you expect them to do. Use your vote, use your voice. And looking more widely, particularly amongst young people, they are citizens of the world. As students across the world talk to each other. We have my own university, London School of Economics, is one of the most international universities of the world. But you can link up, of course, without traveling to the London School of Economics or without our students going to Delhi, even though that's very important. You can link up as young people in the world so much more easily now than you could in the past. And I think you should think of yourself as citizens of the world and think of yourself as young citizens of the world. And you should insist. And we finally have, I say finally, but you know, I was politically active as a student in the 1960s, and we fought the war in Vietnam. We fought against apartheid and so on. And I think we were on the right side of history. Sometimes that's gone quiet, but I think our current generation of young people are fighting the right battle. They are on the right side of history, and we should welcome their pressure and respond to it.
Thank you, Nick, for identifying both the issues of what people can do in their lives and also the political pressure that they can bring to bear. Mr. How would you respond to these young people who are asking us about directions?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, basically what Professor Stern said on what they need to do, I totally subscribe. But I'd like to add one more thing. You know, again, going back to this COVID-19 issue, you know, as you know, it's a really strange virus, and somehow they're picking on the old people, you know, the more vulnerable people. So that's causing all the older people. I'm part of that demographics, to stay home and let the younger people do the outside, right? So maybe it's a message. And when you talk, so in the midst of doing this, you know, whether it's making bank payments or buying food or buying something, you know, they're doing everything online, and you know, they're living lives differently. So they need to continue to do that. As Professor Stern said, you know, think about, when you do anything, think about what can I do this better, right? But the thing that I want to add is that each young person should pick one older person and try to make one change in that one older person in doing something. And I think the entire world will change, because you know, right now we are, because of this COVID, the older people, and I'm not going to tell you what's the age break, you know, the threshold, but I think all of us, except for Ms. Sharma, all of us are in the upper category. So we do need to listen to the younger people and ask. So I guess I'm asking both groups. The younger people, I'm asking, please find just one person to convert them in the way they do things. And if you're an older group, reach out to a younger person and just learn one thing in which you can do better.
Thanks so much. Ambassador Frydenlund, we clearly are on the other side. We are on the side that COVID likes, and we are making space for youth. As we make this space, is there anything from our experience that could help the younger people, or will they have to find the world on their own? Ambassador Frydenlund? You're muted.
Well, well, I belong to the older part, and I have the adult children, and I will say, well, yes, there's a lot we can bring forward, but also my experience is that we all know the situation very well from our perspective. And for us, for you and me, Ajay, it's about listening. We have been able to talk them and tell them, and they picked up quite a lot. But it's also about listening to them, and as also mentioned, they navigate this world better than us. So we're not going to abdicate, but we need to open space and accept that.
So after Ambassador Astuto, I'm going to give the last word to Shambhavi, because she is the one who is the future. Ambassador Astuto, let me turn to you and also put a very specific question that was being asked, which is about the EU-India strategic partnership and whether societal challenges within the current H 2020, the Horizon Europe 2020, would look at these kinds of questions, as well as enhancing the resource availability for these societal challenges in the future.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, actually, India is already a major partner for the European Union in research and innovation. I mean, well, let me simply recall also that around 50,000 students used to be in Europe before the COVID crisis. Clearly, now the situation has changed. And Horizon 2020 has proved a very effective tool to bring together the respective academic community and to develop joint research projects. So the answer is yes. And actually, there was recently a call specific on Horizon 2020 for projects specifically targeted at COVID-19. So I think the EU-India partnership also, when it comes to research and innovation, is always focused on the priority of the moment. So we can be sure, you can rest assured that indeed we'll use all the tools available in our partnership to address the current challenge.
Thank you, Ambassador Astuto. Now let me turn to Shambhavi. Shambhavi, you are the reason why we are all here. Is there anything that we can do which is useful to you and your cohorts?
So I do believe that since I've been part of an educational campus, I do believe that we have certain ideas and certain innovative ideas which probably the ministries and the working mechanisms do not look into that kind of importance. I do believe if we are given such platforms to put forth our views and our innovations, I know too many people around in my friend circle who have worked and who are actually helping the government through its schemes. So I think we need that kind of voice to, be heard at this level with people such as these professors and you lot.
Shambhavi, that tells us that this is only the first of many discussions.
Yes, sir.
And I would like that the next session has not one person of your age, but everybody but one person of your age. I want to thank everybody, but before we end, there is a short film on the youth initiative. Let us focus back on what is it that we look forward to achieve with this youth initiative. And Shambhavi, it's your day. Well, thanks all. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Ambassador Frydenlund. Thank you, Ambassador Astuto. Thank you, High Commissioner Thompson. Thank you, Mr. And thanks to all the people who have joined us, Shambhavi, all your cohorts. And I think we have had something like 1,500 people across the two platforms, Zoom and YouTube. I apologize that we have not been able to pick up all the questions. We had to restrict this, but we hope that this is the beginning of a dialogue. Again, many thanks, and I look forward to meeting again next time in a mix of people and the virtual reality. Good night, good afternoon, bye.
Thank you all for participating. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.